friends, there's an air of mystery about what I do. To people I meet for the first time, it's difficult to explain. The first time I came here to work, I called Jim to find out if this was the right place. It's not your typical workplace. Actually, that's a good thing. I spend more time here with Jim than I do at my own home. Jim is a master stone lithographer, and this has been my apprenticeship. What I love about what we do is that technology and so-called progress hasn't changed the work. Today, we use the same basic tools as were used when the art form was invented back in 1790s Bavaria. There's something about that that's very cool.
At the end of the 19th century, that you have artists like Chéret and Toulouse-Lautrec, of course, that create these beautiful images for the cabaret shows, for theater shows. It's also used in advertising all sorts of products, whether it's wine, alcohol, cigarettes. And it's really those wonderful, amazing illustrators that do these great images all over the streets of cities that you get to see. It's really the beginning of major advertising.
One of Jim's friends is Eric Morleau. He's sort of royalty in this arena. His great-great-grandfather was an originator during the French lithography movement, made famous by artists such as Toulouse-Lautrec.
Our stone library was very similar to this. I love this, Jim. This is great. So we started in 1852. My great-great-grandfather is François Morleau, and he is a printer of wallpaper. Charles Jules Morleau develops the business and buys several other print shops. And at that time, we were printing a lot of calendars, a lot of ledgers, wine labels, chocolate labels, some advertising posters.
It all starts with a blank slate. I love that this work is tactile, all done by hand. The stone is perfectly smooth to the touch. Sadly, in the 20th century, technology endangered the existence of stone lithography in Europe, as well as here in the United States.
My grandfather was very much credited for bringing lithography back into the art world in a way that it had been maybe with Chéret and Toulouse-Lautrec, but where it had been somewhat forgotten for a period of about 30, 40 years.
There were no master printers left in the United States. It was it had pretty much died out. So if you wanted to make prints, lithographs, you had to go to Europe. And if you wanted to make prints in a good place, you went to a place like Morleau's. So June Wayne had been going to Morleau's to make her prints. She talked to the Ford Foundation people and said, we have to do this to save this art and establish it in the United States. They gave her a grant to start this tamarind workshop. Problem was, they didn't have anybody to teach the people who wanted to learn.
And she hired two of Morleau's printers, master printers, took them back to the United States, to Tamarind, where they taught.
Traditionally, they don't share secrets, but they made a special deal. Tamarind is the only place in the country, the only place in the world that teaches people how to print at that level. I ended up going into Tamarind Institute and spending 2.5 years there as another apprentice. But I fell in love with these things and these little rocks and started doing lithographs, and I pretty much stopped doing anything else.
Sometimes I imagine what it must have been like in the Morleau's studio as they worked with artists such as Picasso, Matisse, or Chagall. The collaborative effort is as inspiring as the work. Meeting the different artists who come here to the studio to put their original work on the stone is fascinating.
I can't wait to see the images process. I can't wait to see what we create in the end.
There's a richness about lithography, and there's definitely handmade craftsmanship that really is what makes the difference.
While it's still wet, I can manipulate it.
Somewhat, yes.
Somewhat?
Yeah. It's like watercolor.
Okay.
We use stones. Lithos in Greek is stone, usually limestones. The best ones are usually from Bavaria in Germany. When the lithographer or the artist applies it on the stone, it gets slightly absorbed by the limestone.
I'm going to start in the hair so I can see what it's going to do.
And we use a greasy substance, a greasy crayon, which can also be melted with water. So you can either use it as a crayon, or you can actually use it as a wash in ink if you actually melt it and dissolve it.
It's more process orientated, and you know, you don't exactly know what the end is going to be until that happens, until you see it, you know. But so there's always a level of mystery involved in that sense.
So the medium of lithography is really based on the repulsion of water and grease.
When it bubbles, it means the nitric acid is reacting with the stone, and it's a little bit too strong. So when I put it on there, I'm going to count to 3, and then you'll see the effervescence. 1, 2, 3. You see it? See how it begins to froth in the light areas? That means it's the right strength. It's the length of time that you leave it on, and the strength that you make it. Now, this is all crayon. This is all black, the greasy crayon. What we're going to do is change it from crayon to ink. We'll remove the drawing material and replace it with ink, because I can't print with drawing material. The grease is still in the stone.
And once you've actually chemically prepared the surface, therefore afterwards you can apply the ink.
Now, one of the ways that I tell whether or not the ink is correct is by the sound. You hear it? And when it has the right sizz, it's the right amount of ink.
Only the areas that have been drawn on will retain the printing ink.
If it's not done exactly right, the image could just turn black. It could either turn black or it could go away completely and not come back after you erase it. Once we remove the drawing material and replace it with ink, it's my job to ink it up so that it looks like his drawing. And that's what we got to print. That's what he was happy with when he stepped away. So we have to make that happen again so that he's happy when he steps to it. I look for a full range of blacks, from the very softest gray to the very richest black. Now, and if your camera looks in here, you'll see that these are as black as you're going to get. All right? And you see this soft gray in through here? That's pretty much as soft as you're going to get anywhere on any stone in any technique. So he's got, what we have accomplished is a full range of black, gray to black. And that's the best I can do. And we're hoping that what I get on the next piece of paper will look just like that. And if I can get 2 or 3 that look just like that, I can get 30 or 50. Because that means the stone is stable. That means that this gray is where it's going to be.
After looking at it, then we want it to be a little lighter. So that's where this stuff comes in, these adjustments, because I don't know, it's just little things you see after you see it printed out that you could have never imagined.
It's up to him now. He's shaking his head yes. That means a go. That means a go.
I think that is a go.
Go. Yeah. But once I start and get into the rhythm, the level of the ink has to be the same. The number of times that I roll on the stone has to be the same. We're working with damp paper for right now. And because grease and water repel each other, it has to be the same dampness every time, or it can reject ink in different spots or not print the same or something. But right now we're just looking for the right print. If this print's not good, I will adjust the ink, I'll soften it, add more ink, more passes. This needs a little bit more ink because these things are not supposed to be gray. It's supposed to be black. It's magic. I mean, you saw the image come back on the stone. You saw the image put on the stone. You do a little dance with some gum arabic and a little bit of nitric acid, and you squish it around a little bit, and then you wash it away. And lo and behold, it comes back. And I can't find any reason why it should work. And when I pull that first print off the stone, I'm still like, wow. It will protect the stone for years. And we can come back to it in 10 years and print it just the way it is over there, if we protect it correctly. The numbering, where it says 1 over 10 or 1 over 30, 2 over 30, 3 over 30, the top number is supposedly the order in which they're printed. The bottom number, the 30 or 50 or whatever, is a guarantee to the public that no more than that many of this image will ever be printed again. Normally, what we do is we do a cancellation print where the artist will draw a line through the image and we pull that print. So that's a document that the image has been effaced, so no more can ever be printed. These are bon natures. Now, bon nature means good to print. It's the contract print between the artist and the printer. But the artist says, this is good, I like this is what I want. And the printer says, yes, well, I can print this. So, that's what BAT stands for. And if you notice, I don't know if you can see it in the film, but the little embossing, the JMR.
As an apprentice or journeyman, which I am now, I get to witness artists' reactions to the unique process of making the image disappear before bringing it back to life for printing.
Andre had seen me do it with a couple of other stones, not just his, but other people's. And when he did the flat iron, I erased it. I mean, I removed it. And he goes, how do you know how much to bring it back? And I said, I have a good memory. And he just walked out. He could not see it. And then when he came back in, it was just like it was. He couldn't tell the difference. They're different. In that this one's slightly darker than that one. And the artist, we have to decide which is the right value for it.
When the artist enters the print shop, he may not always know exactly where he's going to go, and so he needs to rely on the printer to really point him in a direction. So unless you're a Picasso and you can sort of master the medium within a couple months, you really have to rely on the printer to help you with your own work, which is not always easy for an artist that is used to working independently in a studio. But it can actually be quite interesting because you develop quite a close friendship working on a project together.
I don't tell them what to draw or how to draw it, except in relation to what's necessary to work on the stone. And they don't come and tell me how to make it work. Clear, bright line. You stay out of my, behind here I'm the captain. When the stone's over there with the crayons, they're the captain. And we collaborate. I do my part, they do their part. One of the problems with artists in this particular process is that there are some artists who absolutely cannot let go. They have to be able to let go and give it to me. And trust me. We actually print the drawing. There's nothing in between. The artist draws on the stone, I do some stuff on the stone, and I don't really erase the drawing, I erase some of the pigment. We actually print the drawing. And no other media does that. Digital's not real, but this stuff is real. And it's of all the printmaking mediums, it's the most autographic. Because whatever mark I make, whatever you see what he's doing over there, we will print that, and it will look like that. And you'll say, oh my God, how'd you do that? And after I print it, I will say, oh my God, how'd I do that?
If this were a drawing, it could be in one place, and that's all it could do. As a lithograph, it can be in many places at the same time. The drawing that I started with is very different from the print. The print is the work of art. Mm-hmm. And so that work of art can be shared in so many different places at one time and have a lot of life.
The work that I print for other artists is partially mine.
Like this has this.
There's no question about it. It's my work. And so consequently, my work over all these years is in probably every major museum in the world.
I think that what we need to do is we need to really get artists excited and passionate, interested again in actually producing work with their own hands and working directly on the stone or on the plate. And so for me, it's a question of trying to promote lithography, to use the story of my family to try to explain to people how important it was, and that this was not just a way to reproduce things. This was actually a way to create things. These are artworks in themselves.
Why do we want to do these, these things that we make with our hands? Because we live in a society, we live in a world that becomes more and more digitized. And I think it's important to keep that magic alive. Maybe it's not. Maybe, we just fool ourselves.
You cannot replace the soul and the talent of an artist. You need artists to actually put the work. It cannot just be done as, everything cannot be conceptual. You need the process. The process is incredibly important because that's where the soul comes from. And I think that everything is a cycle, and I really believe that artists are going to want to go back to that medium, that collectors are going to come back and they're going to stop speculating and they're going to really truly pay attention to the work, to the image and to the soul of the artist.
What Moulin did, it's kind of poetic, but what Moulin did was pass the information on to some apprentices. Now, I'm Tamarind trained, and I'm passing that information on to an apprentice. I could take some people and teach them the process, the procedures necessary to do it, but they don't have the touch. And Irene has that touch, and that's a very rare thing. I get to teach her nuance.
I'm moved by what Jim has shared with me. It's more than learning a craft. Jim is passing down a legacy, a tradition. I've grown by learning from a master craftsman. I take the responsibility seriously, and I love what I do.
Once my job is done, and all the prints are done and signed and delivered to the publisher, we take the images off the stone.
You start with an image on a stone that you want to grain off, right? So this one has some drawing on it, and we want to refresh the surface so that it's clean and smooth and ready to go, right? To be receptive to the drawing materials. And so what you use is, I'll put a little bit on my hand and you can sort of take a look at it. That's carborundum grit, so it's like little tiny pieces of metal that have been shredded up. And it's essentially like sandpaper. What I do is I spin, and you'll see. I won't explain this part. It's self-explanatory. And so what I'm doing is I'm trying to evenly take off a layer of stone, like microscopic. You can grain these for years and not see a difference in the height of the stone, but it's just enough to get off the past image that's already on there. And so now, once I kind of see that the color of the grit is getting a little milky, there's stone coming off with it, I'll wash it off. And you can see that most of the image came off already. That's the drawing material that came off. And I would keep repeating this until I know that the image is gone. The slate is clean, put away, waiting for the next artist to walk through our door, to create a new work of art, one that will be printed, and again, shared with the world.